Hey guys, it's Mel. Today I want to talk about feedback. So for an INTJ, feedback is something that we really thrive on. And yes, some people talk about INTJs not being particularly fond of criticism, but nobody likes criticism. INTJs are very partial to constructive criticism because we are constantly trying to improve the system, we're trying to fix stuff, we're trying to grow as individuals. We value that kind of feedback, that we have something constructive to build on. So if you see a problem and you point it out to us in a logical fashion, we are going to accept that and we're going to thank you for it. If you attack us when we present an idea in a manner where you're like, well, that's so stupid, that will never work, your INTJ may attack you like a bulldog, but it's a whole different situation because that is not constructive in any way at all, and an INTJ can get pretty defensive, particularly if you insult their intelligence. But as a whole, feedback is something that we want because, again, we're trying to improve stuff, we're trying to fix stuff, and the only way to do that, to constantly improve things, to constantly grow, is to identify where that growth can happen, to identify where those problems are. So if you speak up and identify those problems, an INTJ is going to love you for it. We're probably not going to hug you, but maybe in some circumstances if you really need that. But it is something that we kind of thrive on, and some people may shy away from that, but don't be afraid of it. If you have a spouse or a friend or a coworker or somebody in your life that's an INTJ and you're afraid to approach them because you think that, wow, they're so smart and everything, but I don't think this is going to work, but I'm afraid to tell them, don't be afraid of that. We are very receptive to that, and we want to know. We want to know that before it happens. We don't want you to kind of look at us like, you knew that was going to happen. Why didn't you say anything? We're going to be way more frustrated about that after the fact. Tell us if you identify something in there, something that has gone amiss. And we are capable of handling that. We are generally very blunt. You would be aware of that yourself. If we're giving feedback, if you ask us questions, we're just going to give it to you straight. We really appreciate getting the same in return. So an example I have of how much this feedback means to me in my own personal life, I just want to tell you this little story about me in college. So when I was in high school, I was advanced academically, and I took classes that were honor roll, advanced placement, dual enrollment college courses, things like that. But basically in my high school, there were 30 something of us kids, and we were in all those classes together. So we were the smart kids at the top of the class, and since we were doing all those advanced classes, we basically were always in the classes together. And because of that environment, we were all very close, and as the scripture says, iron sharpening iron, that's the environment that we lived in. So we were constantly pushing each other to do better, and it was extremely competitive GPA wise. So everything that we did, we were competing against each other, we were trying to help each other get better, and this environment was just it was so different than college. And as a kid, I was kind of prepared when I was leaving high school and going to college that I was going to have to jump off some kind of cliff, that between high school and college, college was going to be so much harder. It was going to be, and I was doing everything I could to prep for that. Again, I'm in all these advanced classes thinking, okay, I need to do enough because I'm a straight A student and I have to continue that when I'm in college. And then I got to college and it was kind of an absolute letdown because it was I went way backwards, and I was now I'm in grade school instead of high school. But in my freshman composition class in college, my professor broke us up into groups and would assign us papers. And part of our assignment, part of our grade, was a group teamwork participation grade that we got from reviewing our teammates' work and giving them feedback on their papers. So the environment that I came from when I took advanced placement literature courses, we were over there marking each other's papers up and down with red ink and giving all kinds of feedback. And we would go through this multiple times in the environment that I was in. So I proceeded to do the same thing in my college class. My college class, I took online classes actually, which is a whole nother story because my guidance counselor told me that I was going to fail out of school if I tried to take online classes as a freshman, but I did anyway, and I graduated magna cum laude, so ha. But those online classes, there were, dual enrollment students from high school. There were adults who were going back to school after being in the workforce or parenting children and things like that. The demographic was like so different than what I had been used to in high school. And I was completely unprepared for that. But again, I approached it exactly how I had in my high school class. I took each one of those students' papers that were in my group, and I spent hours reading them and dissecting them. So I printed them out. I red marked all over them. I'm highlighting, grammatical errors, spelling mistakes, changes in tense, different things throughout the paper, and then also writing them an email with feedback as far as different things that I thought they could do to improve their paper, so forth, so forth, so forth. All of this, though, is completely devoid of any kind of praise. Because this is, again, the environment that I came from when I was in high school and how I am as a person. Like, what good does it do for me to tell you what's good about your paper? I'm trying to help you get better, right? So what can we improve? The responses that I got as far as feedback with my paper that I sent around to my group were things like, great job, you're an amazing writer, wow, this was such a good paper. And yeah, that was about the extent of it. So I was kind of like baffled, and I didn't know if I had just, drawn poorly, like I got the worst group, right? Oh boy. Or, they didn't have time, so they didn't read my paper, right? That's the worst. All these things are going through my head. But nonetheless, I wasn't really worried. When my professor contacted me and said she wanted to have a conversation with me, I was like, I want to have a conversation with you too, because this whole feedback thing is not going the way that I wanted. And my professor informed me that I needed to step back. I had made some of my classmates cry, and I was not I was not giving feedback the way that she intended me to. And I was like, what? Like, wait a second. I'm over here kind of upset because I don't have any feedback. Like, how am I supposed to make my paper better so that I can get an A in the class? And everybody's slacking off over there. I spent hours going through everybody's paper. I gave them tons of information on how they can improve on their paper, and nobody's helping me at all. Like, wait a second. I'm very confused as to where this is going right now. But I learned from that process that other people don't take criticism the same way that I do. And none of it was ever intended to hurt anybody. Like, my position was just to provide feedback, to provide that insight into things that could be changed. And I think part of that too that I didn't realize is that when I wrote, hey, this, and this, like, you could change this and this and this, it wasn't, you need to do this. It was suggestions. And that was something that the students that I worked with in my high school understood. That when somebody says, hey, you could do X, Y, and Z, it wasn't that you needed to do that. It's just like me throwing out ideas or something else to look at. And that is what I meant. Like, I was well-intentioned with my constructive criticism. I had every intention of everybody getting an A, including me, from being very thorough in my group work. Because group work and teamwork is something I typically get the lowest grades on when I'm in school, and these are reasons why. Here you go. I made my classmates cry. And that was completely unintentional. I mean, it's a lot more fun to make people cry when you do it on purpose, but anyway. Yeah, so I had to learn to lay that back. And when I asked my professor about it, I'm like, well, what do you want for me? Like, what did I do wrong? Like, what part of the constructive criticism did I give them was wrong? Like, was I giving them bad advice? Was I telling them to correct things that weren't wrong? And she was like, no, that's not the problem. She was like, but you have to factor in everybody's kind of like fragile psyche at this point of like, they are not performing at the level that you are. Like, you need to realize that they don't write on the same level that you are. An improvement for them is a smaller step, and that they're not going to go from being where they are to being where you are in one paper. And she advised me to give them one piece of negative feedback for every 2 pieces of positive feedback. And I was like, what if I can't say that many positive things about their paper? And she told me to just leave off the rest of the negative things. Focus on one thing that they can improve on, and don't mention everything that you possibly see that's wrong with their paper. And so I've learned to kind of rein that in to some extent with other people. But I'm telling you, everybody else out there who deals with INTJs, you don't have to do that with us. We want to know all of the problems. We want you to take the red ink and write it all over everything. And it doesn't have to be a paper. It can be our relationship. It can be about our ideas or our projects. Like, in order for us to seek out the perfect answer to things, to solve every problem, we want to identify all of the different problems. And we're respectful of the fact that as much as we try to view everything that we possibly can from every potential perspective and angle in the world, we can't, because we're not everybody else. Like, we realize that. We try to learn that and understand that so that we can view things the way that you do, and the way that he does, and the way that she does, so that we can kind of have that holistic view of something and understand it from every perspective. But we know that we can't. And so we need you. We need you to speak up and tell us where you're coming from and what you see and what you think is wrong. And that helps us not only with the problem and identifying issues in it, but in understanding the perspective of where everyone else is coming from, which is something that we really want to understand. And so it doesn't offend us. Like, it doesn't offend us to come to us and tell us these things, as long as you're thorough and logical and not like personally attacking us, especially our intelligence. I mean, I've seen the same thing, another example, but this one will be much shorter of a story. I was with a group of women once, and this girl opened up and she was sharing about like this relationship that she had with a friend that was really rocky, and how her friend had brought her this list of all these things she needed to improve about herself. And all the women in this group were like, oh my gosh, it's horrible. Like, that was not even a friend. Like, why were you ever friends with her in the first place? That's a terrible thing for anybody to do. And I was just sitting there, like, kind of like, am I the only person in the room that sees that as like being caring and loving? Because I'm like, I'm processing this in my mind right now. I'm like, wait a second. That's exactly what I would do. Like, if me and my friend or my spouse, like if we're arguing, if something in our relationship isn't right, the thing that I would do is make a list about what we needed to improve. And I don't know, I was like, maybe this girl was just really mean and was like, these are all these things that are wrong with you. But I'm assuming that there was a lot more to that of like, I mean, because that's what I would do. Like I said, like if me and my best friend are fighting and I want to resolve the conflict, I'm going to try to identify all of the problems in our relationship and then identify how to solve those problems as far as what could change. And I would never give anybody a list of things that were like, oh, you need to change all this stuff about you, without also thinking I need to change things about me. But it also wouldn't dawn on me that I needed to tell you that, because if I needed to change things about me, like, that's my responsibility, not yours. So why would I give you a list of things to change about myself, right? But I can see how other people would be offended by this and take this the wrong way. But yeah, that was interesting, insightful moment, because I was sitting there with everybody just like dogging this person, going, oh my gosh, like I totally have done that before, and maybe not in the same way, but maybe I did. Because I'm an INTJ and that's what I do. I fix things. I fix all the things, including humans and relationships, whenever I can. And I want to have all the information and all the feedback that I can so that I can make the right decisions and the right changes and fix everything and make it all perfect. And that's what I do. So let me know in the comments if you agree and provide me with feedback. Really, honestly, you can say whatever you want. Remember the difference between criticism and constructive criticism, because that's what I'm after. Like anything that can improve on anything, and that's what an INTJ, we love that. We want that. And maybe a lot of other people and other personality types don't, but INTJs, we kind of live for it. We're all about it. You can't fix the thing unless you know it's broken, so identify the broken stuff. It's part of the process. Anyway, yep. Leave me feedback. This might be very interesting. But thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next time.